So as I said, this is actually always my favorite bit of our live coaching sessions, which is where I get to have the opportunity to see what you're really thinking and feeling about and answer your questions live. So I've just had a little vibrate on my phone, so I'll read the first one. SA says, could a point of difference be education? How to say we would like someone with similar high-level job without sounding superficial. Okay, so I do think, I'm just going to put this out there and you can totally disagree with me if you want, but I think whilst it's good to have preferences around stuff like education level and job, I would also be open-minded about who you may fall for in the end. I think probably what you want to do is you could say, and your sort of what am I looking for section, again, I wouldn't say it as directly as I'm looking for someone who with, you know, a university education, a super high flying job. You could say something like, I'm looking for someone who shares my love of tight deadlines, pushing themselves to improve and reading books like, and then you can describe perhaps some titles of things that perhaps somebody who's on a similar level and has same interests would like. So again, I would, instead of stating something specifically and directly, I would think about how can you describe how someone would spend their time? How can you describe how someone would act? So you could even say, instead of saying I'm looking for someone ambitious or I'm looking for someone driven or highly educated, I would think about how does that person spend their time? And whilst I would encourage you to just have education level and job as a preference rather than a must have, it is really good that you're already thinking about, you know, what's going to work best for you. And I think that's a really good place to come from with dating, which isn't about all going out there and impressing everybody. It's actually about really identifying the people who are going to connect best with you and having really good standards around that. So next question comes in from Nick. He says, Hayley, photos mean a lot, but I learned from recent experience, personality and character mean a lot more. I got to like my previous girlfriend a lot through lots of video calls. Now, I couldn't agree more. I think when also we connect with someone emotionally and we really are into their personality, I think everything about them can become more attractive. Well, on the other hand, if someone can be model beautiful, but if we don't have that interpersonal connection with them, we're not going to really feel it. So hopefully the techniques that I've spoken to you about today are all about how you can get more of that personality into your profile and into your messages. I also want you to think about how you can put personality across through your photos. So as I said, by being photographed in locations where you like to hang out, by thinking about your personal sense of style, all of these things are going to help to allow people to understand your personality, even if it's through the medium of photographs. Also, I love the fact that you connected with a girlfriend through video dates. As you know now, you can call somebody through Match. So if you want to get to know someone better, then remember, video dates I don't think are going to go out of fashion. I think they're here to stay. So even though perhaps as the pandemic is ending, it may be easier to meet somebody in person, it can also just be a really great next step before you make that commitment to have that first date, to give someone a video call. And I think often, as I said, verbally, when we can see someone, when we can express ourselves, we usually all become much, much more attractive. So I think that's a really good comment from Nick there. Okay, so we now have a question from somebody called Camilla, who is 26. She says, how do you get the guy to take the initiative and take the lead when it comes to asking someone out, arranging dates, and in general being decisive? Okay, so Camilla, what the dating coach in me wants to say here is, if it's really important to you and it's part of what makes you find someone attractive, that they take initiative, you can think about ways that you can create the right environment for them to be able to take that lead. Now, quite a few guys out there will worry about taking the lead or being too decisive or taking the initiative too much too early on before they really feel comfortable that you like them. And the reason they're not going to feel comfortable about that is they're going to worry that if they overstep the mark, they might mess things up with you. So you really want to focus on giving them indications that you're going to be receptive to when they make that next move. So you can say things to someone like, if you're having a back and forth on Messenger, you could say something like, I think these kind of conversations are always, say that's probably more of an in-person conversation, wink. Or, so again, you can hint very strongly towards a date. You could even say, oh my gosh, all this hot weather, I'm dying to go to the park and grab a juice right now. So you could even say, oh, I'd really want to do this. And you could actually be looking out for those guys who are listening to your preferences about how you'd like to spend your time and taking up those cues. It could be also that you express an interest in saying like, oh, that sounds really interesting when they express about a hobby. Also, remember that whilst you want to give the guys out there as best an opportunity as possible to really lead and to be decisive and make that date for you, if this is something that's a really strong preference of yours, if not everybody feels comfortable with communicating in that way, because there are going to be some guys out there who prefer, I guess, a less traditional dynamic and they want more equality. And this may actually just create a point of compatibility for you. So if someone does see things very differently, that might just mean that they're not the best match for you. So 100% look out for people who like to organise dates in the same way you like to have them organised, that you think it's easy to communicate with, but also give plenty of positive encouragement and good indicators that you'd be receptive and would say yes if a guy was going to take that big bold step and to ask you out. The next question is from Lucy. How to know online date is who he said he is? Is it a good idea to connect him via social media at early stage of dating? Well, this is a tricky one because on one hand, social media does give us an extra insight into somebody's life. However, I think that sometimes too much checking the person out on social media and Google may actually get in the way of you really connecting and appreciating who they are in real life. And I want you to be focused on the experience of getting to know someone rather than the impression you form of them through social media. So when you meet a date, do all of the normal common sense things to ensure safety. As I said, doing a video call date through Match first could be a really great way to feel things out, and it means you also don't need to swap contact details. Always meet in a public place. Never give out your address. Tell people where you're going. Don't send money online. Like, these are all the obvious steps that we can all take, whether we meet someone on or offline, to be safe. However, if you do want to get to know someone, go for a date that feels relatively low commitment. That could be a quick juice in the park or a quick iced coffee. So it doesn't feel like this big commitment if you don't feel a click. Make it in a public place so you feel safe. Keep it to maybe an hour or 90 minutes so it's pretty low pressure. And instead perhaps of building up an idea of who someone is via how they appear on social media and the internet, instead I would encourage you to get to know that person in real life. Matt M now writes, my self-confidence has dropped and I get a little anxious in busy places due to the pandemic. Wow, I think so many people will feel the same, Matt. What alternative date venues would you recommend for a first date that are not the typical pub/bar or restaurant? Well, first of all, I think lots of people will be really into not going to a pub, bar, restaurant. And in fact, your date venue is also a really great way that you can create a point of difference between yourself and potentially other people that they might be meeting. And it's also really important when it comes to dates that everybody out there honors and chooses a first date that's something that they enjoy and feel comfortable with. And again, if someone really is keen on having a 3-course meal for their first date and you'd prefer to do something much more casual, this really could come down to compatibility as well. So see it as a compatibility thing. So Matt, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on suggesting a nice low-key date. Now, I know that over winter, when there was where pubs and restaurants were closed, that a lot of you might have gone out and done icy cold park dates, which may not have been that much fun. But now the weather's warming up, I think a date, having a nice walk along by the river or walk through town or walk around the park by grabbing an iced coffee or a juice can be a really nice date. Checking out a food market or going for a bike ride, or again, doing something where you're not just sat in one place can also often feel better. when we're moving along, we tend to feel less anxious. And likewise, when we're sat opposite one another, like on a dinner date, it can feel like the pressure is mounting. But when we're just walking along beside one another, again, because we're not directly facing one another, it can actually take the pressure off. So definitely think about dates that you would enjoy. Definitely think about dates that enable you to feel more comfortable and more relaxed. Dates which involve walking around, doing things, or observing something are also great because they give you something to talk about. And finally, remember, if the other person is set on having a date that's very different for how you'd like to spend your spare time, that could just be an indication there that you don't quite have that level of compatibility. JT now asks, as a woman, how do I come over as flirtatious rather than provocative in my profile? So I've got two answers to this. The first one is, I think that, again, when we think about how someone is receiving the information about ourselves and how someone is, for want of a better word, judging us, the right people and the best people for you are going to judge you in the right way. So you won't, someone who perhaps has got this person is being provocative hat on might choose to see you in that way, while somebody else will just be like, wow, she's being really playful and flirtatious and fun. So see this partly as, again, compatibility. The right people will connect to the messaging in your profile in the right way. I say this from personal experience, in fact. As you can imagine, being a dating coach is a pretty awkward thing to bring up on a first date. And I was pleasantly surprised when I was on a first date with my husband, where he didn't bat an eyelid at the fact I was a dating coach, didn't make a big deal about it, and just, asked me some quite interesting questions about my career. And I thought, oh, this person's really different. So remember, the right people will choose to view your attributes in a positive way. So let's not worry too much, and I won't want you to censor yourself too much. On the other side of that, a good way to come across as flirtatious in a way that's, I think, quite well balanced is just to think about, again, the words that you use. If you write a profile in a tone of voice which is friendly, informal, and fun, again, when a profile has warmth in it, there's going to be that subtle hint of flirtation. So a good exercise for you is probably the one from the first section, where I said for you to read your profile out loud, think about what qualities you might have, and then actually try and say your profile and write down what you say so it comes across nicely in your tone of voice. You can also, to make things more flirtatious, you can also choose to write a couple of points of difference or challenges in your profile. So when you write to someone and you say, I see that you're into the footy, what's the chances I could persuade you to turn it off and come for a bike ride with me instead? Just by using a word like persuade, or by saying something like, can I be a bit cheeky and ask? By sort of bartering with someone or challenging them or negotiating, and that immediately can create a really good feeling of flirtation without you going towards anything that's too provocative. And that's actually a really cool thing that not just you can do, but that everyone out there can really embrace and do. It's that idea of, I'm really happy with who I am right now. I'm working out actually if you're going to be a good match for me. So I'm going to playfully create these points of difference and playfully challenge. So next question is from Arlene, who's 55. And she says, I'm finding it difficult to just chat without asking lots of questions. The men don't seem to ask questions as much as I do. Is this an issue? Okay, so I think what you want here is, just like everybody, we want to have balance in our conversations where you're both contributing to the conversation, but you also feel like the other person is making just as much effort as you do. Now, I think questions are good things to put in your messages because, as I said earlier, it does give you something really specific to respond to. However, I would probably say with your questions to avoid questions that are too logical and instead go for questions where the other person really has to expand on their answer. And this is the same, whether you're a man or a woman, and no matter who you're looking for, the principle is going to be the same. So rather than saying, so how long have you worked there? You would probably choose to say, what motivated you to get started that job? So what you're looking for really is when you do ask questions, make sure they're really big questions which give the other person the ability to be really discursive with you. And instead of giving you I would avoid logical questions. Also, make sure that alongside asking questions, you are always, underlined always, sharing information about yourself. So if you said, what motivated you to get started in that job? I don't know about you, but I started my career totally by accident. You have that nice balance in what you're saying where you are asking them a discursive question, but you're also sharing information about yourself, because as well as getting to know them, you also want to create curiosity about who you are. The final point I have to tell to you today as well, Arlene, is honestly, if someone isn't making that effort with you, or isn't making the effort with any of you out there that are listening, if someone's giving you very, dare I say it, lazy responses to your questions, then you know what? I would just leave that messaging conversation. You deserve to meet someone who makes just as much effort to get to know you as you do to get to know them. So I really want you to also focus on looking out for that reciprocation. So this next question is from Sarah. How to not have too high expectations and how to cope with rejection without taking it too personally. So Sarah, I think the trick with high expectations is sometimes if you wear your heart on your sleeve, if someone makes a really good, strong first impression of you, we can then start to create a big story about them in our minds. We can start to think about them all the time, and because we're thinking about them all the time but we don't really know them, we start to build up a picture of them which actually might not be what they're actually about at all. So kind of a powerful exercise you can do for yourself is you can literally ask yourself, when you know you're going into fantasy mode, you can ask yourself, what don't I know about them? That's the question. It's what don't I know about them? This will hopefully get you to kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, I am actually just starting to get to know this person. Hopefully that will start off that process of you staying more grounded in the day-to-day and reality. Now, if you stay grounded in the day-to-day, the next action step you want to take is to just make a conscious effort to get to know people slowly. It takes a long time to get to know someone. So make sure you don't rush that judgment call and you give yourself as much date, as much time, take it as slowly as you want to really get to know someone. Finally, when it comes to rejection, I want you to know that rejection is something that absolutely everybody experiences. I know that doesn't make it easier, but it is true. And often the things that we see as rejection might just actually be points of incompatibility. So for instance, if you're messaging someone and they stop responding, instead of thinking that it's all your fault and that, you've done something wrong, or your photo wasn't attractive enough, or you weren't funny enough, what you could do instead is just turn that all around and make it about their compatibility with you rather than whether they've approved of you or not. So you could say, well, hang on a minute, this person isn't being that consistent, they're not being that responsive. Because of this, actually, you know what, I don't think they would be a good partner for me because I really want someone who clearly communicates. So a lot of the time when we interact with people, we really are just starting to see about who they are and where they're at with their lives. And so remember to always filter those things through, is this person right for me? Have I chosen them yet? Have they done enough for me to dedicate this level of time and effort and energy that I'm currently giving them? So I've got another question here is from Lou, who asks, are the guys who message all day, every day, just bored or really keen? And those who message once a week, not that interested? So I think, Lou, the first thing that we've got to acknowledge here is for everybody who is messaging either every day or once a week, this is a good example of how that messaging style, someone has taken that on board and has started to infer things about your personality. So if you are only getting online and messaging people once a week, that might communicate that you're not interested. In fact, it could just be that you're busy and that you just forget to log into Match. But be very conscious that if you're not logging in and responding to people regularly, that might not communicate the right thing about you. Likewise, if you are messaging all the time, I think that can be quite nice. I just want you to make sure that's reciprocated. So if you're messaging a lot and the other person isn't matching your pace, you might just want to hold back there, because you don't want to communicate you've chosen someone before they've had a chance to really engage with you. Remember, if you choose someone, it has to come down to you choosing them because of something they've contributed to the interaction. And Lou, also, when you think about kind of why someone's doing things, it can be very hard to tell why someone's doing something. Unfortunately, none of us are psychic, so we don't know whether the people are messaging all day because they're really keen or because they're bored. We don't know. So all you can think of is how I'm messaging this person right for me? Am I comfortable with the pace of these messages? Do I like communicating with people daily, or actually do I prefer communicating with people less often? So don't try and second guess what a person's really thinking and feeling. Instead, just stay focused on whether that communication style works for you. Final question. Oh, I've got a question here from C, who says, if after some time of messaging you realize it's going anywhere, how can you let the other person know? So I think C means you realize it's not going anywhere, because I think that's what she's saying. So if you're messaging somebody, you realize it's not going anywhere, how do you handle that? Well, I think a lot of the time when we just let the conversation drift and we stop responding, people can find that quite disorientating, and they may again create a different meaning around why you've chosen to do that. So instead, I think it's always safer to assume that people will probably feel more comfortable when they have that level of connection. So I would handle this in two ways. If the conversation isn't going anywhere because the other person isn't responding, or they're giving you extremely limited responses, they're just giving you like a smiley or something as a response, then I think it's okay for you to just not respond. So you can ask yourself the question, does this message really need a response? And if it doesn't need a response, you can leave that conversation. If, however, you've been chatting to someone a while, they're still trying to connect with you, but you're just not feeling it and you don't feel you've got that level of connection, be open with them about it in a kind way. So you could just say something like, you seem like a really good person, so I wanted to be open with you. I'm just not feeling the level of connection to take things forward. Now, whilst that might be like, for them to read initially, most people will prefer to have that clarity and have, someone have the respect to at least be clear with them about what's going on, rather than just to stop responding to the conversation. Okay, so we've got our real last question for the evening, and it's from Angela CB, who's 50. How to draw a man to you on first date, and how to read the signs if they like you / are serious. So I think when it comes to a first date, here's what I'd say your intention should be. You shouldn't go into a first date thinking, how do I win this person over? You should think, I'm interested in this person enough to have this date with them, but ultimately I need to still work out a lot of things about whether someone's right for me or not. So what will happen then is, if you can develop your sense of standards, which are, what am I really looking out for in this man? That will be communicated through your behavior. You may choose to talk about things you're already passionate about and see if they can engage with you on that subject. You might also choose to ask them some questions around some things that are really important to you. Either way, you're going to turn up to that date a bit more like the interviewer than the interviewee, which, funnily enough, will make you very attractive, because it makes us unattractive when we go on a first date and we're like, oh gosh, how do I make someone like me? It makes us very attractive when we go, you know what, I'm really happy with myself, and my job on this date is first and foremost to have fun, and then really to see how I connect and relate to this person. And just like some of the other questions we've looked at this evening, unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to know the signs if someone is or isn't serious, but there are some really good honest signals. as I said earlier in this session, you're not going to feel confused. Someone is going to be clear. Someone is going to be consistent. So this isn't just having a good first 3 dates. This is like a good first 3 months. Someone's going to be making a really good effort to get to know you. They'll invite you on proper dates. They'll spend time with you. They'll regularly make time with you. They'll regularly communicate. So it's good not to overthink that, look out for signs that are too cryptic. Often the best signs are the ones that are really honest and really open and really obvious. Okay, so just coming to the end of our live Q&A then. That last 90 minutes has totally flown by. I just want to say thank you for the amazing questions. I think they're actually probably some of my favorite selection of questions yet. They were really specific and really amazing. I also appreciate you taking part in our little surveys, and also for just listening to me. I know it's a beautiful evening here in the UK, so thank you for taking the time to join in on this live coaching session with me. Of course, we're going to be back again very, very soon. So if I didn't get round to answering your question this evening, trust me that myself and the rest of the team here at Match, we do read all the questions. So you may well find that we cover your question in a future live coaching session. And shortly after this session closes, you will be able to watch a video on demand, a replay of this coaching session here on Match. So if you thought I was saying something quite interesting, but you didn't quite have time to take note of it, don't worry, because you will be able to watch this whole coaching session on replay. So as I said, thank you again, everybody, for hanging out with me on this hot and sunny evening. I've really appreciated it, and have a great rest of your day.